Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the final CMRTO webinar of 2019, Everything You Need to Know About the MRT Act Now. Okay, I can't advance. Excuse me, technical difficulties. I can't advance my slides. It's okay, I have somebody here to help. Which one?
That one.
I don't know. Evidently, I can't use a mouse today. Welcome again. As you know, I'm Linda Gough. I'm the Registrar and CEO of the College of Medical Radiation and Imaging Technologists of Ontario. And our mission is to regulate the profession, to serve and protect the public interest. And we now have 5 specialties regulating one profession. So the big news is we just heard a couple of weeks ago that the Medical Radiation and Imaging Technology Act is coming into force on January 1, 2020, which is so exciting. You know that we've been waiting for this over 2 years and preparing for it. So we're now moving full force ahead with the final stage of the integration and regulation of sonographers with CMRTO. So the Medical Radiation and Imaging Technology Act, or the MRIT Act, was passed in 2017 under the Strengthening Quality and Accountability for Patients Act. And so this new act repeals and replaces our current act, the Medical Radiation Technology Act, when it's proclaimed in force. So in 2017, it received royal assent, but it had to wait to be proclaimed in force before we could actually enforce all the changes. And the whole purpose of this change is to improve transparency to the public and also to our members by changing our name to the College of Medical Radiation and Imaging Technologists of Ontario. So that better reflects all 5 specialties that are now regulated under our college, because of course diagnostic medical sonographers don't use radiation. So this was a big piece, was to have this and imaging piece added to our name so that it better reflects all the imaging modalities and not just the ones that involve radiation. So there's a whole bunch of things going on as this comes in, as you can imagine, and the legislation has a lot of transitional provisions. So this is what I want to talk to you about today, is what the changes are, when you can expect them, and if there's anything that you need to do as members of CMRTO. So the first good news is that there is a piece under the legislation that states that persons registered under the MRT Act are deemed to be members under the MRIT Act. So that means if you're currently a member on December 31st, 2019, on January 1st, 2020, you will then be a member of CMRITO. It's just automatic. We don't have to do anything. Well, we are doing some work behind the scenes, but as members, you don't need to do anything. The other good news is council members and the president and vice president under the MRT Act continue in office until their terms expire. So we don't have to do anything with reappointing or re-electing. All those terms continue on until the term expires. Bylaws, regulations under the MRT Act also continue until they are revoked or replaced under the new legislation. So basically, the college carries on. There's a lot of work to do, but we can carry on and do our business. And we've been through this before. Many of you will have seen this slide before because there's a long history of the evolution of the regulation of medical radiation and imaging technologists in Ontario. So we started in 1967 with the Board of Radiological Technicians, and that included, it was a list of registered individuals, and they were radiological technicians and radiation therapists. And then in 1993, the MRT Act was established under the Regulated Health Professions Act, and MRTs became one of the 21 health colleges at that time. And so the way we managed that was, again, everyone who was registered on the BRT register became members of CMRTO. And also for the first time, nuclear medicine was included. So that was our third specialty. In 2003, MRI technologists became regulated with us as our fourth specialty. In 2011, we had an updated scope of practice statement and additional authorized acts. And then, of course, as you know, in 2018, sonography became regulated as our fifth specialty. And now we have in 2020, the MRIT Act changing the CMRTO to the CMRITO and also the name of the profession. So you can see how the profession has evolved under the legislation as the technology has changed. Of course, as sonographers became regulated at the beginning of 2018, we had a new standards of practice, new code of ethics, and our new QA program. And that's because as soon as you become regulated with CMRTO, you need to make sure that you're adhering to all these three documents. So that was the first thing that we always need to do whenever there's a change in legislation, is to make sure our standards of practice are up to date. The other things that we've been doing to get ready for the proclamation of the MRIT Act was looking at our visual identity, or our logo. And so our council approved a new logo for CMRITO at the June 2018 meeting. And that was in anticipation. We were hoping that the MRIT Act was going to be proclaimed in force of January 1 of this year. So we're just a little bit later, but that's okay. We are ready to roll with it. So this exciting new logo is a great refresh. Of course, our old logo was created before there were websites and electronic publications. So we were pleased to have the opportunity to refresh the logo at this point in time. So we spent much of 2018 and 2019 working on all the changes that we need to do in order to support the MRIT Act, and also how it will impact the college. So we've got our new visual identity that reflects the college's new name and represents the full membership, so all 5 specialties. We've been busy building a new website that reflects these changes to the college's name, and also delivers enhanced navigation content. And in fact, we released that back in September. So we'll have to update that again for January 1. And we've been busy developing new publications, letterhead, templates, all those things that we do in order to reflect the logo and the new name of the college. So here we are. We weren't quite sure when it was going to happen. So here we are now, just finding out in November that it is going to happen on January 1st. So this is terrific. So the first thing that changes is the name of the college. So our new name will be the College of Medical Radiation and Imaging Technologists of Ontario, or CMRITO. And here is our new visual identity. So we have our acronym, CMRITO. And we also have a description of what it is that we do, because nobody really understands what a college actually does. It's a confusing name, or a confusing term, both for the public and sometimes our members. So we have added a description of what it is that we do at CMRITO. So we are the regulator of medical radiation and imaging technologists in Ontario. And of course, we have our refreshed logo there too. So on January 1, 2020, our URL is also going to change. So it's going to change to www.cmrito.org. So that will be another important piece as we move forward. I think I might have. Yep, I missed one. So here is the college continuing. So under the MRT Act, as it reads right now, it says the Board of Radiological Technicians is continued under the name of CMRTO. And so you can see way back in 1993, we already had this transition built into the MRT Act. So it's exactly the same process for the MRIT Act. And so it says the College of Medical Radiation Technologists of Ontario is continued under the name College of Medical Radiation and Imaging Technologists of Ontario. So this is a good thing. Also, our council members, there's a transition for them. So the new act says a person who was on the council before this act comes into force continues as a member of the council. And similarly, the president and vice president continue under the act until their term expires, and that will be in June 2020. So here's our council. They continue, which is a good thing because they've had to have quite a few meetings over the last little while to prepare for the changes that are coming. And of course, our president, Wendy Raby, and our vice president, Jay Needles, continue in their terms until the election happens again in June of next year. So all our bylaws and regulations, all the other pieces that make CMRTO work, they also continue on. So the MRIT Act says bylaws and regulations made under the MRT Act continue in force until they are revoked or replaced under the new act. And you'll remember back in 2018, we revised our bylaws. We combined them into bylaw 60. So we have one place for bylaw 60 to come in. And so that's all taken care of. And we'll be continuing on with our bylaws. Similarly, with our regulations, we have 3 regulations made under the MRT Act. Our professional misconduct and quality assurance regulations, they will continue on under the MRIT Act, and also our registration regulation. But that's the only regulation that needs some changes as a result of a change to the name of the profession. Because as you can imagine, the registration regulation talks about the profession of medical radiation technology. So that needs to be updated to medical radiation and imaging technology. So we had our consultation on those changes back in June of this year. And so we are working with government to submit those changes. But of course, until the new proposed regulation is passed, we will be continuing under the old regulation, and that certainly is working for us. We're still going to be able to register everybody, which is the important piece. Our scope of practice statement changes. So we add "and imaging" to the name of the profession. So the practice of medical radiation and imaging technology is the use of ionizing radiation, electromagnetism, sound waves, so there's our sound waves there, and other prescribed forms of energy. So you can see just 3 words, and we got sonography into our profession under the same scope of practice statement. So, so that's really good, and it's great now that it's there in the scope of practice statement under the MRIT Act and fully transparent to the public and members. The Authorized Act. So as you know, under the Regulated Health Professions Act, there are 13 controlled acts that can only be performed by individual healthcare practitioners who have those controlled acts authorized to them under their profession-specific legislation. And so for medical radiation technologists, we have 5 authorized acts, and you can see them there. There is no change under the MRIT Act. So they continue on, and also the requirements or the conditions like needing an order from an authorized health professional, they all continue on too. So no change to the authorized acts. The name of the profession is a big change. So we have medical radiation and imaging technology is now the name of the profession. And also the name of our professionals. So under the Act, it states medical radiation and imaging technologist. So this starts to become a mouthful, right? So prior to this, we were all medical radiation technologists. Now the general term is medical radiation and imaging technologists. So our council thought about this last time we were looking at the standards of practice in 2017 in preparation for sonography coming in beginning of 2018. So you'll note that there was a change decided upon then, and it was consulted with our members at the time. We've now changed under the standards of practice, MRT, to refer to members rather than medical radiation and imaging technologists because it becomes a bit of a mouthful. But that's okay, because those are our standards under the Medical Radiation Technology Act and now under the Medical Radiation and Imaging Technology Act. So it's one thing that we've already anticipated the change for. So here's the section that talks about members continuing on. So the MRIT Act says a person who was registered the day that the Act is proclaimed in force shall be deemed to be a holder of a certificate of registration issued under this Act when it comes into force. So as we said earlier, December 31st of this year, anyone who is currently registered will now be registered on January 1 under the CMRITO. So a question that people ask is, what do I have to do to transfer my registration? Nothing. So you'll be able to go to the website and you'll be able to see under the public register, you'll be able to see your registration there, and you'll be ready to become registered, or you are already registered under the CMRITO. There's lots of other questions too, because people are in different stages of the application process. So what if you've applied and you've been approved, but you haven't yet registered with CMRTO as you're currently practicing in Alberta? That's okay. The decision for you to become a member of CMRTO still applies when we become CMRITO. Or I've submitted my application under the CMRTO, but I don't yet have my decision from the registration committee. That's okay. The work of the registration committee and the decisions will carry on under the CMRITO. And for all our students who are currently in their educational programs, but they haven't written their exam and they've put in their application, again, nothing different. Everything continues on seamlessly. And then individuals who are grandparented in, so there was a lot of sonographers grandparented in 2018. And so a question is, do I have to do an approved program and an educational program now? Of course not. No, you're a member of CMRTO. By virtue of being a member or registered with CMRTO, you will be registered with CMRITO. So hopefully that has relieved some individuals and alleviated some concerns. So for the members, it really will be very transparent and very seamless. So our registration regulation updates, the conditions on registration. So as you know, every single person registered with CMRTO has this condition on their certificate of registration that says the member shall practice only in the areas of medical radiation technology in which the member is educated and experienced. So of course that will change on January 1 to include end imaging. So that's great, right? Because the sonographers especially have been saying, but I don't practice medical radiation technology, I practice sonography. So this is a great example of where it's really important that we had the name updated. Our restricted title. So this is under the Act, and what this does is it prevents anyone who is not a member of CMRTO from using our protected title. So the protected title under the MRT Act is Medical Radiation Technologist, or a variation or abbreviation. And so of course that will now change to medical radiation and imaging technologists. So that means we can't have unregulated practitioners who are holding themselves out or using our restricted title to indicate that they can practice. It makes it illegal for non-members to do that. And similarly, the holding out provision under the legislation, these are key components of protecting the public under the Regulated Health Professions Act. So now it says, or it will say, no person other than a member shall hold themselves out as a person who is qualified to practice as a medical radiation and imaging technologist or in a specialty of medical radiation and imaging technology. So again, if we get reports of unqualified or illegal practitioners, these are the pieces of the legislation that we would use to prevent that person from using our protected title or from holding themselves out to the public as being able to practice the profession. Here's our specialty titles and our abbreviations. So we have the current abbreviation, MRT. There's very few members who use that. It's only members who don't hold a specialty certificate of registration. And that includes specialty what is it? I've forgotten the term. The nuke med, yeah. There's a special. Yeah, it's a limited practice license. That's not the exact term. We have a few individuals left who were grandparented in back in '93. So they use the term MRT, and they will be able to continue to use that as well under the new Act. We can also now use MRIT if you are looking for a generic kind of title. And then we still have our MRTR, MRTT, MRTN, and MRTMR. And the new abbreviation now, of course, DMS can use it without the MRT piece. So we've kept the abbreviation simple based on what people are using now, because the last thing we need is to be changing all those abbreviations. So that's good. You don't need to order new business cards or change your titles. And of course, for people with multiple specialties, here's Caroline and Annette, and you can see how that looks. For Caroline, it's MRTR and MR in brackets. And then Annette uses her MRTR and her DMS without the bracket. So in addition to what's happening in the college and with our protected titles and all those pieces, As you know, in order for you to practice the profession and to apply ionizing radiation and electromagnetism and sound waves to patients in order to perform diagnostic and therapeutic procedures, there's a whole lot of other legislation that's happening there to enable our members to be able to do that. So we're going to go through what those changes are so that you're aware of all those. And of course, all this is set out in our publication, What You Must Know About Performing Procedures for Medical Radiation and Imaging Technologists. So we will be updating that early in 2020 because there are a few changes, but really everything just continues on. So there's 3 areas that we need to look at: the Healing Arts Radiation Protection Act, the X-ray Safety Code that's under the HARP Act, and then of course the Controlled Acts Regulation under the RHPA. So under the HARP Act, this is Section 5 that says no person shall operate an X-ray machine for the irradiation of a human being unless the person meets the qualifications and requirements prescribed by the regulations. And then Section 5.2 goes on to state who has the qualifications prescribed by the regulations. So you can see there, number 7 says a member of the College of Medical Radiation Technologists of Ontario. And then there's the gray section. So this is the way government deals with changes in legislation so that it's fully transparent and people can see what's going to change. So in the gray box, it says on January 1st, 2020, the day named by proclamation of the Lieutenant Governor, paragraph 7 of subsection 5 is amended by striking out the College of Medical Radiation Technologists of Ontario and substituting the College of Medical Radiation and Imaging Technologists of Ontario. So that will be happening early on in the new year, but we all know about it right now because it's showing as a gray box in the legislation. So if you go to e-laws, e-laws has all the legislation and regulations that are in effect in Ontario, and you'll be able to see that. So similarly, there is the X-ray Safety Code, which is a regulation made under the HARP Act, and it talks about things like who can order and apply ionizing radiation for CT. It also permits members to be able to perform mammography on patients and the breast screening program without an order. And it also talks about who are students and how students are supervised or how they're able to apply ionizing radiation before they become members. So this is a really old regulation, and we're really pleased that we've finally been able to get some of the terminology updated because you can see there's some old terminology from before 1993 that we've been able to clear up. So wherever it talks about a member of CMRTO or a registered radiological technician, or a radiological technology student, or a radiological technician registered under the Radiological Technicians Act, that has now all been changed to a member of CMRITO or a medical radiation and imaging technologist or medical radiation and imaging technology student. So there we go, that's all taken care of. So anything you are doing like supervising students or having students take x-rays or performing CT or dental CT, all that is now updated, or it will be updated effective January 1. So that's good. And then if we go to the Controlled Acts regulation under the RHPA, And this is where we get the authority to apply electromagnetism for MRI. So first of all, as you know, the Controlled Acts regulation defines 3 forms of energy, and there's 2 that relate to the practice of members of our profession. So the forms of energy is electromagnetism for MR imaging and sound waves for diagnostic ultrasound. No change to that section at all. Then for applying electromagnetism, it currently says a member of CMRTO is exempt from the Controlled Acts piece of the RHPA for the purpose of applying electromagnetism if the application is ordered by a member of the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario. And there's a whole bunch of other conditions which you can see in our What You Must Know About Performing Procedures. So of course, effective January 1, 2020, this changes to a member of CMRITO is exempt. So just a very simple update to the name of the college. Similarly for sound waves, so applying sound waves for diagnostic ultrasound, it changes from a member of CMRTO to a member of CMRITO is exempt. And of course, there's more health professionals who have the ordering authority for sound waves, and but there's no change here. So it still will be a member of the College of Midwives, a member of the College of Nurses in the extended class or the nurse practitioners, or a member of the College of Physicians and Surgeons. So no change there, just to update to the name of the college. So what's going to happen on January 1st and 2nd? So we recognize that there's a lot of changes to occur. And January 1st, of course, is a holiday for many of you and also our suppliers who help us do all these changes. But also, there's it's very difficult to get everything done exactly on one day. As you know, websites and electronic or databases are all very complex and integrated now. So sometimes it takes some time for changes to come into effect. So we're planning for over the 2 days, January 1st to 2nd. We will be releasing our new website. We will also be releasing our updated standards of practice, code of ethics, and our QA program. And again, those are just technical updates. There's no substantive changes at all to any of the standards or the code of ethics or the QA program. We'll have an updated jurisprudence program. So the legislation learning package will be updated and released. And as you know, that is a free program that's available on our website under the QA section. And so this is a great opportunity for you to review, especially Module 1, because that's where all the changes are. And this is exactly what we developed the legislation learning package for, is to make sure our members are aware of any changes as they become into effect. Our new public register will be released, and also we'll be sending out an email notification to all our CMRITO members and applicants, notifying you of the change, telling you about the new standards of practice, and just a heads up, we're going to have new email addresses too. So our email address is going to change from @cmrto.org to @cmrito.org. And then you know we have a lot of publications, and so the other ones will be updating we'll prioritize them first to see which ones we can update technically and need to be done sooner rather than later, and the other ones we will update throughout 2020. So quite a bit of work, but it's all very exciting, and it's great that now we have a name that reflects all 5 specialties. So here's our new website, CMRITO.org. As you know, we released our new website on September 20th. And we released it under the old name because we had lots of challenges with our old website, so we needed to get the new one up. So we were prepared actually for January 1 of 2019 to go live with the website, so that we've been doing some changes, technical changes around words, and of course the name of the organization, the name of the profession, and the technologists, and also the name of the legislation. So what can you do starting in the new year? So first of all, read your emails from CMRITO this time. So you'll want to make sure that you add us to your safe receivers list, and that our new email address doesn't get put into your junk folder. You'll want to review the legislation learning package, especially Module 1, if you haven't looked at it in a while. Check your public register posting. Just make sure everything is accurate there and that we have accurate information on you, because you'll be able to go into your member and applicant portal and update everything as usual. Don't forget to inform your employer. So you might think that the hospitals and the clinics know about this. No, they won't know about it necessarily. So you'll want to make sure your employer is aware, although we will be notifying as many organizations as we can around these changes. Sometimes it takes time for everyone to be aware. And then you can help them update their policies. So for example, when they're doing a job posting for any positions, now you'll be wanting to make sure that it says registered with CMRITO or CMRITO, not CMRTO. And of course, all these learnings you'll want to include in your e-portfolio. This webinar today, you'll be able to include in your 2019 portfolio. And then, of course, if you review the legislation learning package come the new year, you'll be able to record that in your e-portfolio for 2020. So those are all the pieces that are happening. It's an exciting time. It will be smooth and seamless for you as members and applicants. So, please let your colleagues know not to worry about anything, but it's going to take us some time to get all our publications and for the hospitals to get all their processes up to date. So thank you for your attention. If you have any further questions, you know where we are. You can add them to the webinar, or you can email us separately. And you can also call. Our phones still work. Our phone number is not changing. So that's good. And just rest assured that there's no big changes for you in your day-to-day practice. You'll be able to continue on. So thank you all for your attention, and I wish you all a happy holiday season, and hopefully everything will go smoothly at your end as well as it will here. Take care, everyone.